Long ago, in the heart of the African savanna, there lay a small, peaceful village surrounded by dense forests and rolling plains. The villagers lived simple lives, cultivating their land, raising livestock, and telling stories under the vast, starlit sky. Among them was Zola, a young woman admired not only for her beauty, but also for her kindness and wisdom. She had a radiant smile that could light up the darkest night, and a gentle heart that made her beloved by all. The village had many traditions, and one of the oldest was the belief in animal spirits, beings who could take human form and walk among people. These spirits were said to be cunning and powerful, capable of great kindness, but also terrible mischief. Elders often warned the young about such creatures, cautioning them to trust their instincts and avoid strangers who seemed too perfect. Zola, however, had grown up hearing these tales but had never encountered anything out of the ordinary. Her days were filled with gathering water from the river, weaving baskets, and dreaming of the adventures she might one day have beyond the boundaries of her village. She was content, yet a part of her longed for something extraordinary, something that would change her life forever. And so, one fateful evening, as the sun dipped below the horizon, casting the sky in hues of amber and gold, Zola stood by the river, completely unaware that her wish was about to come true in ways she could never have imagined. As the moon began its ascent, casting a silver glow over the village, Zola noticed a figure approaching from the direction of the forest. It was a man, tall and striking, dressed in robes of deep crimson and gold, unlike anything she had ever seen. His eyes sparkled with an unusual light, and his voice, when he spoke, was deep and melodic, carrying an air of authority and charm. The stranger introduced himself as Kofi, a traveler from a distant land. He claimed to be seeking a place to rest, and spoke of his admiration for the village's peaceful beauty. The villagers were cautious at first, but his warm smile and generous gifts quickly won their trust. He brought rare spices, beads that shimmered like the stars, and stories of lands beyond the horizon. Zola, too, was captivated. Kofi seemed to know just the right words to say, and his gaze lingered on her longer than anyone else's. Over the following days, he spent much of his time with Zola, speaking of dreams, destiny, and the wonders of the world. He treated her with a reverence she had never experienced, and soon her heart began to stir with feelings she couldn't ignore. One evening, under the canopy of a sky glittering with stars, Kofi declared his love for Zola and asked for her hand in marriage. The villagers were awestruck by the grandeur of his proposal. He promised Zola's family wealth and prosperity beyond their wildest dreams. However, not everyone was convinced. The village elders, with their sharp eyes and deeper understanding of the world, felt an unease about Kofi. They noticed small things, a shadow that seemed too large, a strange silence in the forest when he was near, and the way animals avoided him. They cautioned Zola's family, urging them to delay the marriage and learn more about the stranger. But the lure of riches and Kofi's undeniable charm proved too strong. Zola, swept away by her feelings, insisted that he was the man of her dreams. Her family, eager to secure her happiness and their own future, gave their blessing. And so, preparations for the wedding began, with the village bustling with excitement and anticipation. Unbeknownst to Zola, her life was about to change in ways she could never have foreseen. The day of the wedding dawned with the sky painted in brilliant shades of orange and pink. The village was alive with celebration. Drums echoed through the air, women adorned in vibrant fabrics danced joyfully, and the aroma of roasted meats and spices filled the atmosphere. Zola, dressed in an exquisite gown of gold and emerald green, looked radiant. Her family and friends admired her beauty and wished her well, though some harbored quiet concerns about the mysterious Kofi. Kofi spared no expense in ensuring the wedding was the grandest the village had ever seen. He brought musicians who played enchanting melodies, gifted the villagers with jewels and fine fabrics, and treated everyone with boundless generosity. His charm was so overwhelming that even the most skeptical elders began to soften. As the sun set, casting a golden glow over the ceremony, Zola and Kofi exchanged vows. He promised her love and protection for eternity, while she pledged her loyalty and devotion. The villagers cheered as the couple was pronounced husband and wife, their union sealed under the witness of the moon and stars. After the feast and festivities, it was time for Zola to leave her home and journey with Kofi to his dwelling in the forest. As they prepared to depart, Zola's mother clung to her, tears streaming down her face. "Be careful, my child," she whispered. "Always trust your heart, even when things seem uncertain." With that, Zola and Kofi began their journey. The villagers watched as the couple disappeared into the dense woods, the flickering light of their lantern growing smaller with each step. The path grew darker as they ventured deeper into the forest. The trees seemed to close in around them, their branches forming twisted shapes that danced in the shadows. Strange sounds echoed in the night, howls, rustling leaves, and the occasional cry of a distant animal. Kofi, however, seemed completely at ease. He led Zola with confidence, speaking soothingly of the beautiful home awaiting them. Yet Zola couldn't shake a growing sense of unease. The deeper they went, the more the forest seemed alive, as if it were watching her every move. Finally, they arrived at Kofi's home, a magnificent house carved from ancient wood, adorned with intricate carvings of animals and symbols Zola didn't recognize. It was beautiful, yet there was something about it that made her heart race. "Welcome to your new home, my love," Kofi said with a warm smile. But as Zola stepped inside, she couldn't help but feel that she had stepped into a place where the line between man and beast blurred dangerously. Zola marveled at the beauty of her new home. The walls were adorned with tapestries depicting animals in vivid, lifelike detail. The furniture was carved from the finest wood, polished to a gleaming shine. But the house was eerily quiet. There were no servants, no sounds of birds or insects outside, just a heavy silence that seemed to press against her. At first, Kofi was the perfect husband, attentive, kind, and always eager to please her. He brought her gifts from the forest, rare flowers, exquisite stones, and delicacies she had never tasted before. He would tell her stories late into the night, his voice like a melody lulling her fears. Yet, strange things began to happen. Zola noticed claw marks on the wooden floors, as if a large animal had passed through. She found tufts of golden fur in places Kofi rarely went. At night, she sometimes heard low growls, though Kofi dismissed them as the sounds of distant animals. One day, as she explored the house, Zola came across a locked room. The door was heavy, with deep scratches around the edges. When she asked Kofi about it, he grew visibly tense. "That room is not for you, my dear," he said, his tone firm. "Some doors are better left unopened." Zola's unease grew with each passing day. The forest, the silence, and the locked door all seemed to hold secrets she was not meant to uncover. One night, Zola woke to a strange sound, a deep rumble, almost like a growl, coming from the direction of the locked room. Heart pounding, she crept out of bed and followed the noise. The house was dark, lit only by the moonlight streaming through the windows. As she approached the room, she saw the door slightly ajar. Peering inside, she froze. There, in the center of the room, stood a lion. Its golden mane glistened in the moonlight, and its massive form seemed to fill the space. But as Zola watched, the lion began to change. Its limbs stretched and shifted, fur receding, until Kofi stood where the lion had been. Zola gasped, and Kofi turned sharply, his eyes glowing like embers. "You shouldn't be here," he said, his voice a mix of anger and sorrow. He confessed everything. He was a lion spirit, cursed by the gods to live as a man by day and return to his true form at night. He had fallen in love with her, hoping she would never discover his secret. "I love you, Zola," he said. "But now that you know, you must decide whether to stay or leave." She decided to stay for a little longer, hoping to understand him better. But each night, as he transformed, she felt a growing sense of danger. The house, once beautiful, now felt like a prison, and the forest seemed to close in around her. The night was thick with shadows as Zola crept through the silent house. Her heart thundered in her chest, every creak of the wooden floorboards sounding like a drumbeat of alarm. She carried only a small satchel containing the charm she had discovered, a water skin, and a loaf of bread wrapped in cloth. The amulet hung around her neck, its strange warmth offering a sliver of comfort. She slipped outside into the cool embrace of the night. The forest loomed ahead, a labyrinth of gnarled trees and whispering winds. Despite her fear, Zola pressed forward, her bare feet silent on the forest floor. Every instinct urged her to flee, but she moved cautiously, knowing that haste could draw unwanted attention. For hours she navigated the dense underbrush, the moonlight her only guide. But the further she went, the more alive the forest became. The trees rustled as though whispering secrets, and unseen eyes seemed to follow her every move. Suddenly, a guttural roar shattered the stillness, echoing through the trees and freezing her in place. "Kofi," she whispered, clutching the amulet. She turned and saw him, golden mane illuminated by the pale moonlight, his massive form weaving through the trees with terrifying grace. His glowing eyes locked onto her, filled with a mix of fury and sorrow. "You cannot run from me, Zola." His voice rumbled, distorted by the beast within. "I promise to protect you, and I will, even from yourself." But Zola didn't stop. She ran with every ounce of strength she could muster, the forest a blur around her. Behind her, Kofi's roars grew louder, the sound of his powerful strides closing the distance. The amulet began to hum against her chest, its warmth intensifying. It seemed to guide her feet, pulling her toward safety. As she neared the edge of the forest, she saw a faint glow in the distance. The elders of her village, gathered in a sacred circle, their chants rising like a song of salvation. Zola stumbled into their midst, collapsing to her knees. The elders didn't falter, their voices weaving a protective barrier around her. Behind her, Kofi emerged, his lion form towering above them, his amber eyes blazing with anger and pain. "Return her to me," he roared, his voice shaking the ground. But the elders stood firm, their chants rising in intensity. The elders' chants grew louder, their voices intertwining like the roots of an ancient tree. The air shimmered with energy, the boundary between the human world and the spirit realm thinning. Kofi prowled at the edge of the sacred circle, his massive paws stirring the earth, his eyes never leaving Zola. "Zola," he growled, his voice trembling with emotion. "I never meant to hurt you. I only wanted a life with you, to love you as best I could." His form flickered between lion and man, as though the very act of speaking his truth was unraveling him. Tears streamed down Zola's face as she stood, her voice breaking as she replied. "You lied to me, Kofi. You trapped me in a life I didn't understand. I loved you, but I can't live in fear of the part of you that you hid from me." Kofi let out a mournful roar, a sound that seemed to echo through the very fabric of the forest. "Then let me go, Zola," he said softly, his lion form lowering to the ground. "Release me from this curse, and let me return to where I belong." The elders raised their arms, their chants reaching a crescendo. The amulet around Zola's neck began to glow, its warmth spreading through her body. She clutched it tightly and stepped toward Kofi, her heart aching with love and loss. "I release you," she whispered, tears falling freely. The amulet blazed with light, and the air was filled with a deafening roar as Kofi's form was enveloped in golden fire. For a moment he stood before her, no longer a lion or a man, but a being of pure light. His voice, now calm and resonant, echoed in her mind. "Thank you, Zola. You've freed me. Remember that I loved you, always." And then he was gone, the light dissipating into the night. The forest fell silent, as though mourning the loss of one of its own. Zola collapsed to the ground, her body trembling. The elders gathered around her, their hands resting gently on her shoulders. "You were brave, child," one of them said. "You faced the unknown and chose truth over comfort." The next day, Zola returned to her village. Though her heart was heavy with grief, she also felt a strange peace. Kofi's love had been real, even if it had been shrouded in deception. She vowed to carry the memory of him with her, but to also live her life boldly, unafraid of the unknown. And so, Zola became a woman of legend in her village, her story told under starlit skies to remind all who heard it that love, while powerful, must always be rooted in truth.